Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today, as usual. How's my peeps doing today? I hope all is fine in PDR Posse land. Hey, before we even get started, I just want to let folks know one bit of information here, and that is that our good PDR Posse leader, Bridge MCP, she had some issues over the last few weeks. That is the reason we haven't seen her here for a while. Our great posse member, she had some issues with her gallbladder, etc. So she had to have some surgeries, etc. So everybody get onto the internet who knows her, give her a let's get busy, Bridge MCP. Let's hurry and get better, Bridge MCP. Get back into the fold. We are missing you. We are missing you grandiosely. Okay, welcome aboard, Nanette Bird Smith, our one and only. How are you doing, my dear, beautiful friend? Eric Hayes is back with us. Eric Hayes, thank you so kindly for having been a part of the Ask Egberto Anything this weekend. Your information, I mean, all of us got a chance to talk honestly among each other. I'd like to have more people there, but I am so terrible at promoting and advertising and saying, guys, don't forget to come out on Saturday. Ask Egberto Anything, first Saturdays of every month. So I tell Tom C, please remind me to do my job, Tom C. You always remind me of those kinds of things. Thank you so kindly. Thank you so kindly. Brian W. Featherstone, welcome aboard, Ryan. How are you doing today? Hello, AVQ. ¿Cómo estás, mi hermano mío? He said he will be watching on Twitch. So let's go ahead. Hospitals ask whenever Michael comes, he gives us a whole bunch of stuff, and I love reading this stuff because he goes ahead and he does his research. He goes ahead and does his homework. So let's start. Hospitals asked Biden administration to help lower the soaring costs of travel nurses. Egberto, this is a topic I hope you cover either today or for tomorrow's show. Hospital administrators are going to ask Democrats to protect their profits above the needs of essential healthcare workers, those we might see as heroes at time of crisis. Interesting enough, I have friends in the movement that go around the country doing exactly that. They're traveling nurses and they work hard as hell. Some states are trying to cap travel nurses' pay. You see, these women have been women and men, I'm sorry, that's a recessiveness, I guess, that associate nurses, women. We all have to overcome those recessive natures within our own sexism that as we extricate all our prejudices, that is. Anyhow, travel nurses are paid more for a reason. The higher wage incentivizes them to leave their families and their homes to live in unfamiliar locations for extended periods of time. The higher pay ensures that demand is met when the need isn't urgent. It's amazing. They want supply and demand to work for the capitalists. You know, inflation, that's what inflation is, right? Oh, we can actually sock you with the price, so we will do it. But when it is time to pay the people, they don't want to do it, of course. Anyhow, continuing. Leaving family and traveling for long periods of time reflects the fact that traveling nurses experience high opportunity costs. That's an economic term, opportunity costs. So in order to incentivize nurses to supply more, they must be compensated with higher wages to make up for large opportunity costs. Economists call this the law of supply. Price is merely a signal that represents the amount of resources available. Those who wish to implement price caps really just wish to ignore the reality of scarcity. But while they may wish to bury their heads in the sand, it won't shield them from the results of the policy. Price cap cause shortages, but let's remember also there's another caveat to that, and it's called the pricing power and monopoly. Okay, and what we have in this country right now is a pricing power and monopoly because we have no real shortages of basic things, but we're still increasing the prices of them because others have pricing power. So as we talk about scarcity, let's understand what scarcity is real and what scarcity is manufactured. Oil shortages are manufactured scarcities. Food shortages are manufactured scarcities. I mean, there's not a scarcity of eggs. There's not scarcity of all these different things. In fact, there are many times the government has to buy off milk to increase the price, or buy off these different produces to increase the price, something that ideally in a true market would never have to be done, right? But anyway, that's for another day. United Nurses March is planning a million nurse march on DC on May 12th. Likely I'll be here. If you know any nurses, ask them if they're participating. The focus, federal regulations for safe staffing ratios to ensure better patient outcomes. Fair wages, including standing against any proposed cap to nursing pay and follow through with the real protection. Last one from El Señor Ratin says, JCRN. Hey, you're into our nurses today. Thank you. I love my nurses. Healthcare CEO pay to average healthcare worker. Pay was 253 to 1 in 2020. Median CEO compensation was $15.5 million. What the hell does a CEO do? It does for $15.5 million in 1 year, when the nurse is maybe making a couple of $100,000 max, but in reality probably about $100,000. We're in God's world, in the world of what makes him that valuable when he doesn't do a damn thing. The nurses work, the doctors work, all these other people work, and he gets $15.5 million. That is what we talk about, the deficiency in the way our capitalist structure operates or works, and that defines the structure. A CEO worked from the comfort and safety of their homes. Most frontline staff were making 253 times less, as tens of thousands of Americans went into medical debt. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, let's see who else we got here. Every case has a long comment. The time is never right to attempt migration by sea. To those who risk their lives doing so, the risk is not worth taking. Allow me to be clear. If you take the sea, you will not come to the United States. Any migrant intercepted sea, regardless of their nationality, will not be permitted to enter the United States. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas telling Haitians and Cubans not to come to America. U.S. Coast Guard Headquarters, July 2021. Unlawful presence in the United States will alone not be a basis for an immigration enforcement action. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, January 21st, 2022. I know where you're going. I think I know where you're going. Flip this around. Why would he say this about Cuba immigration and not have the same for the southern border? Do you think this is two-faced bull at its best? Boats are intercepted, but we have body of water that greatly limits the number, but not the southern border. It's wide open for people and drugs to come. The government has created a huge revenue stream for the cartels, even helps them to fly in people all over the dark of night. I want to ask Eric a question. Why would the government see a value in just going laissez-faire at the border? If that, that Republicans would like you to believe, Republican politicians would fool their people like Eric and others to believe that somehow there's some virtue in just letting things go crazy, batshit crazy at the border. Why would they do that? Why would they risk their re-election on things? It makes no sense. It's not logical. Now, by the way, the statements made by Mayorkas, I was very disappointed in him, because whenever I hear any American say, if you're in sea, let you die because you don't have any right to be here. Whenever I hear that, I just go back 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. Suppose we had a whole bunch of natives sitting on the land, and as those pilgrims who crossed the ocean, as they cross the ocean and they're starving because their ration for that 3-month trip was done, they had to get to land to eat. Had those guys say, turn around, go back from whence you come. Where is the mercy? Remember what Jesus said, and I'm not a Christian, I'm a humanist. Jesus said, open your door to your foreigners, feed the poor. All these things that Jesus said, that these people who purport themselves to be Christians have been learning from their leaders, that it is okay to be evil about it. The evangelicals have turned evil because their leadership, and I'm not blaming the rank and file evangelicals. They were made evil because of their pastors who sold out to a capitalist structure where money is everything. That is where we're at today. Suppose Mayorkas was wrong for saying those. I know he said that because he didn't want that flood of people to come over. I understand that. But to use those phraseologies when after you had a Trump in office, what he should do is fly a lot of people over to Haiti, over to Cuba, over all these places, and try to work out keeping them there, paying them to stay there, because after all, a lot of our economic problems that we have created in Central America, South America, and elsewhere is the exact genesis of the migration here. You don't see a lot of French people trying to come here. You don't see a lot of these people where we don't have an unfair advantage trying to come over here. They don't. Why? They have a better social safety net anyway. I wish people understood history, geography, and what we do overseas, because we don't make nonsensical comments whenever we know the expansiveness of what goes on overseas and elsewhere. But when we are limited by what Fox News tell you to think, and you don't understand the different processes overseas, and you don't read the Spanish papers, and you don't read the papers from other parts of the world to understand a different point of view of what's occurring, then it makes you permanently ignorant or temporarily ignorant until you choose to learn. Anyhow, Tom C says, woo, made it through the weekend without needing medical care. Welcome to America's healthcare system. And I know exactly why you're saying that, Tom, because you are the star of our show today, Tom C. You are the star of our show today. So stick around and make sure and share it to your friends, Tom, because you are. Continuing. We have let's see. Saludos a Bridge MCP from Nanette Bird Smith. She says, missing Bridge MCP. Eric A says, would not need travel nurses if you did not fire the ones there already. I suggest that you do the numbers, because again, the number, what you just said, my brother, you know, we were talking over the weekend, brother. That is a nonsensical statement. The order of magnitude of nurses that are traveling compared to the amount of nurses fired, ones and twosies here, it doesn't compare. So again, please, when you make statements, sometimes think a little bit before you write them, because it says a different story. Kim In Jin, welcome aboard. He says it's called greed. Nanette Birdsmith says, replying to Eric Hayes is wrong. Yes, he is. He is absolutely wrong. What makes you think there were nurses there before? There, exactly, Eric. The main reason they have traveling nurses is because of the lack of them. I think they're referring to live-in nurses, and no, they're actually talking about. I have friends that travel to Pittsburgh when it flared up there. What happens is, this pandemic flares up in different areas at different times. So you may need a whole overpopulation of nurses at one time in Timbuktu, North Dakota, and then at some other time in the eastern end of Washington. And that's what's been happening. Michael Rodnan said the first U.S.-Mexico fencing wasn't built until 1918, just over a century. This xenophobia wasn't the founding principle. Well, I think a lot of people need to read the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty. The Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty was a treaty after I think it was the Mexican-American War, when Mexico was going to be turned over, all of Texas and New Mexico and all of that was going to be turned over to the states, right? And one of the deals were the people, the Mexicans, the indigenous people, Mexicans and everybody that were living there, they were supposed to be able to stay there, maintain their culture, etc., etc., etc. But as we have always done, there is yet we ask everybody to follow their contractual duties. In other words, if you signed a treaty with us, abide by that treaty, but we never do. Remember the Black Mountains? It was supposed to go to the Sioux Indians. And as soon as we found gold there, we kicked them out and we took the gold. I mean, you have to understand. Those are the things we do, but we don't talk about it. One of the reasons we don't want to teach real history, I'm not even talking about critical race theory, because that is something taught at law schools. We don't want to teach real history because if we understand what the leaders do, remember, these aren't the things of the average American citizen does. They're the average human being, no matter what citizenship or whatever you are nice people. But the leaders, the hungry, the psychopaths, the capitalists, they are the evil ones that do bad. They are the ones that have no problem making money on your back, like the story we're going to tell, brought to us by Tom C. on Saturday during our Ask Egberto Anything. Thank you, Tom. I took that story to Daily Kos, and I got one rebuke at Daily Kos that was correct. And I'm going to mention about it later on, but it's not the time to do it quite yet. Tank Murdoch, if you don't know Jesus, don't preach Jesus. Actually, believe it or not, I was a youth preacher back in Panama. On Youth Day, I preached. And I tell you what was interesting with me preaching, and I was in awe. I gave a sermon once, and the way I started the sermon was, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And I started talking a whole lot of other stuff from the Bible. I know the Bible fairly well. In fact, I read the entire New Testament. I forgot most of it by now, but I read the entire New Testament. And one of the things that we talked about is I used to tease my daughter because when I gave a sermon, I remember the preacher comes up and there's a long line of people coming up and turning their lives over to the Lord. And I'm sitting down like, ooh, I'm scared because I jotted up that stuff, and I'm like, wow, the power of the word is amazing. And if you are able to talk to people, you better be doing good because otherwise you can do the kind of evil that you see the people who speak, the leaders of the right wing are doing. Their words are toxic. Their words kill. Their words really, really kill. All right, let's see what else we got here. Eric Hayes, that's a reply. Eric Hayes says Maoka's statements and government policies are two-faced at best. I mean, Eric, I can't argue with you on that because you're correct. I don't see how in God's name Mallorca could make a statement like that. All you had to do is apply what Mallorca said to the pilgrims, and it makes him look like an hypocrite. Okay? Because we could have told those people who sailed to America the same thing that we're telling those people who are sailing from Cuba, who are sailing from Haiti. Okay? We could have done the same thing. All right, Tank Murdoch says China puts Muslim in slavery and genocide too. Yes, they do. You're talking about the Uyghurs? Absolutely so. Tank, the funny thing about it is a lot of my right wingers on this show think they're going to tell me a truth and that I'm going to disagree with them because it is them coming and they want to show me that I am so much a hypocrite because I am not going to be. No, if my right wingers tell me something that is true, including criticizing something that we've done wrong on the left or something that folks have done wrong on the left, I'm going to be on your side. And you can ask Eric if that's not the stance I always take. Ask anyone on the right. When Daniel Ledo corrected me on a particular issue, I also say, brother, you're right. So you're not going to catch me there. So don't waste your time trying to do that. Let's just move forward. Annette Bird Smith says, Eric Hayes, I live in SWFL, Southwest Florida, and every snowbird season now and prior to COVID, our healthcare system is overwhelmed and the problem is mitigated by travel nurse and other medical personnel. I've lived here for 35 years. Exactly. I will write, let's see what else we got. I don't know what you mean by nope, I will write at will. Don't know what that means. You may want to exacerbate. Don't fire nurses or end or military or cops or firefighter. They are all heroes. Treat them as such. Yeah, we believe in treating them as such. But you guys, the right wing doesn't want to pay them. The right wing wants to talk about we support the police, but during the insurrection, we'll kill them. We support the police, but when it's time to give them a good sort of health care, to hell with it. Oh, we support our firemen, and when it's time to pay them, even Sylvester Turner balked. No, I don't like the hypocrisy of supporting our public servants until we have to pay them. Let's be real. All right, let's see. CRT is reverse racism. I suggest you go back and study, Mr. Tank Murdoch. Kim In-jin says, there's no way we can expect mercy from those who have no mercy in them. Lee Grant says, leftists and progressives are always at war with the past. That's why they're so fond of history. No, we are not at the war of the past. We just know that the past actually must be learned so that it's not repeated in the present towards the future. That's all. And those people who don't know the past, I mean, let me give an example, right? You look at the state of minorities in this country, right? And if you don't know history, you would have a tendency to believe that somehow these people's hue is somehow reflected in their success in life. When in reality, the genesis of this country actually is responsible for the condition of inequality in this country. If you don't know history, you can't know the genesis of the problems that are caused. And then you don't have enough empathy to say, okay, this person behaves this way because of history. That's why history is so important. Now, that phrase that you use is something that I've heard a lot of right-wingers use, Brother Grant. And it sounds good. but it's a silly phrase. It really sounds good. Oh, you're stuck in the past. It's not that you're stuck in the past, it's that you learn from the past. That's what it's all about. All right, Tank says, you are a political preacher, not a biblical preacher. It's called progressivism. Thank you, brother. I'll take that as a compliment. Ask Whoopi about toxic anti Semitism. I am still going through I am not talking about the whoopee stuff on my show because I have some learning to do myself. And I don't want to, I have some people in my woke group that have written papers on it. And I want to study the papers before I actually take a commitment to how this stuff goes. Because, like I said, whenever I'm talking, I want to make sure and be truthful. I don't want to make the mistake. A lot of folks listen to what I'm saying, listen to what I write. And I don't want to make the mistake to mislead things at all. So that's why I'm very careful in with the whoopee subject. I mean, I'm very torn with the whoopee subject. Daniel Lados, Eric Hayes says Spotify to change some things and still support Rogan and not give into the censorship push. Rogan is begging for forgiveness and a whole lot of stuff right now. I don't think he really needs to. I just think if people don't want him on Spotify, let the market dictate, right? And if people start pulling their stuff from Spotify, otherwise Rogan stay. I mean, let the market. You guys always talk about let the market decide. I don't believe in no damn market, okay? But I think if you don't want your music alongside Rogan, put your music somewhere else. That's why it's a free country. Daniel Ledosa, I find it interesting how Americans of all political stripes seem unconcerned or unaware that the whole world is about to explode. America is about to be shown a paper tiger. The repercussion will make issues like gender identity look quite silly. Daniel, there is some truth to what you're saying here, and it all depends on how Biden and others react to a whole lot of issues. But what you are saying, I don't know exactly what you're meaning. Okay, what the whole world explosion is that you're talking about specifically. But you know what? I think it's interesting that I agree with you on that point. I really do. I really do. Okay. Let's continue here. Para ver. Rogan still has 100 million. Yeah, and Trump got elected, and Trump got 74 million people to vote for him. I still can't get it. I still don't understand it. But, who am I? Who am I? Anyway, I want earlier this by the way, every first Saturday, please sign up at politicsdoneright.com/ask Egberto. I'm gonna type it in and hope I don't make any mistakes. politicsdoneright.com/ask Egberto. Please sign up there. I think that is correct. And sign up, and it's free. Just sign up and come and talk. We had quite a few people, 5, 6, 7 of us over the weekend talking. I'd like to get 20, 30, 40 in the long run, or maybe more. And most people just like to listen, but we have a lot of people that came in. Eric says, you think costs a lot? Can now wait till Russia invades Ukraine? I'll talk about that after, Eric. We'll talk about that after. But anyway, Tom told us a story that I mean, it really. I don't think Tom understood the effect that story had on me, because it was one of those stories that makes you want to throw your hands up in the air, especially when I posted it and some people had such misinformation about Canada and England and France. This thing, what happened to that guy, could not happen in Canada or France or any of those places. It just does not happen, okay? It does not happen. And that many of our American brothers and sisters have been lied to into believing it does is what hurts all of us. It doesn't only hurt those right-wingers that believe that, it hurts all of us. So let me play the story from yesterday. And Tom, I want to thank you so kindly for bringing that to our attention, because I think it is so important, that story. And later on, I'm going to want to follow up on that, Brother Tom. But let's go ahead and get started. This week we had a great Ask Egberto Anything. Tom C had a story about a neighbor who got a heart attack and died, and it gives the clear indication to the reasoning behind why we must have some sort of a nationalized healthcare, Medicare for all, but something even deeper than that. Listen to Tom's story. I think if you don't have tears in your eyes at the end of this story, something is wrong. But we have got to make a change here in America.
I wanted to tell you a little story, something that happened kind of not directly to me, but indirectly, because we had this neighbor, her husband just died next door. And we knew that the man had a heart attack and died. We didn't know the details until the other day. Well, I got on Zoom meeting with her in our group. We have a poetry group and some other things. And she related this story and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it scared the heck out of me and Elaine too, because, we talk about the healthcare system in the United States and we talk about Medicare for all. I think we got a bigger problem than how to pay for medical issues. And this story demonstrated it. Her husband had a heart attack on a weekend, on Saturday morning. They went to the emergency room in this hospital right down a few miles from where we live. And they treated him, but just briefly. And they said, we can't handle you because we don't have a cardiologist here. We don't have a specialist. And it's the weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
So they put him in an ambulance and sent him down to Ann Arbor, which is 30, 40 miles from here, and where they have a cardiac unit.
A level one.
He got there and, oh yeah, we'll take you right in. 9 hours later, emergency, 9 hours sitting in emergency. They didn't take him in. He's sitting there. They had a few tests and they said, oh, we're trying to get a hold of the cardiologist, but it's the weekend. It's the weekend.
Yeah.
So they finally, she's in a panic. The wife's in a panic. She's talking to all these people and they're saying, we're trying to get a hold of somebody to help you. Just be patient. Sitting in the waiting room from 10 o'clock in the morning to 7 at night. She says, I want to go someplace else. This isn't working for us. Oh no,
Yeah.
somebody says, well, we'll put you in a room. Oh, we don't have a room because of all the COVID issues.
Yeah.
And if we could get somebody to clean this one room, maybe we could. And the wife says, well, I'll clean the room. And they said, no, you can't clean the room. But they finally get him in the hospital, no care yet. They put him, they're trying to they can't give him much pain. He's in agony. The guy's he's in perfect agony. They can't.
Yeah.
And the wife's saying, what can you do? And this one nurse says, welcome to the American healthcare system.
wow.
Welcome
But
to
they
the
should never
American
have.
healthcare. This is what she said. They said to her, unbelievable.
That's
Well,
unacceptable.
The doctor will be seeing him in the morning. She gets home. She gets a call later, a few hours later in the middle of the night. He's dead. He had a second heart attack. No treatment, nothing.
Yeah.
He's dead.
Oh, Tom.
It's like, oh my God. And I'm thinking, if they had a cardiologist in there, they could have had emergency surgery. They could have saved that man's life.
When did this happen,
Given the
Tom?
medication.
Just 3 weeks ago, it happened.
Wow.
And they were making an excuse. The excuses was the COVID. They were short-staffed. Okay, people were sick, and then they didn't have a room right away. COVID, but they couldn't get a hold of the cardiologist, and the excuse was, well, it's the weekend.
It's the weekend.
So here's my thought. We're old. Elaine and I, we're in our 70s, and it's like, well, what happens to one of us? Where do we go if we have a problem, if we have a heart condition or something? And if it's on the weekend, forget it.
Unfortunately, that is more the norm than anything else. You're talking about Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yes.
That's not a little town.
No,
and
this is
like
a big
medical mecca of the area.
And I wanted to tell you too, because I've been thinking about this. What you talk about capitalism, and what really bothers me. And a lot of times I'm thinking capitalism. Okay, we need some form of capitalism. But when you talk about healthcare, I think we're in trouble with capitalism because these hospitals in our area, there used to be like 4 or 5 hospitals around here different hospitals. Now they're basically one in our area and two in Ann Arbor. And they build these massive complexes with all these people supposedly, specializing. And now you go to a local hospital and they say, oh, we don't have the special, you have to go here. And so they have to transfer you. They can't take care of you. And then the emphasis is on making profits. So they want as few staff as possible, taking care of as many people in these big complexes. And so you're kind of out of luck unless you've got the right situation where you go to the right place at the right time. And I'm thinking, God, do we need a national healthcare system?
Yes, we
More
do.
than Medicare. I'm talking beyond Medicare. I'm talking about maybe some form of almost nationalized system, maybe a hybrid, but where there's control over these hospitals, creating these monopolies and oligopolies where they overextend themselves. They can't take care of people. So they have these centers you have to be transferred to, and then they're all jammed up because they
Tom,
don't have enough staff.
I want to
Pretty
interject
sad.
because that is a story. If we had so many people, at any given time, most people are healthy, right? Or fairly healthy. What I mean is everybody here is
Not
fairly
really
healthy. We're not going
critical.
to see a doctor right now or in the next 10
Right.
days likely or anything like that. So at any given time, it only affects a small fraction of the population, and people have short memories. I mean, I think these are stories that people have to see in that guy who died from that heart attack and in that woman who lost her husband. People have to see themselves in those women and in those people. And what we've done is abstracted all of that, right? So you go on
Taking the
TV,
person out of it.
and when they tell you about how great American medicine is, you just take the top line and then your story never gets taken. It's like, okay, Tom's story may be the exception. It's not. I have a wife with
No.
lupus. I have a daughter who just had 2 strokes. I mean, it is just amazing that we allow them to do what they do, and the moniker that's used against us when we want to do right by people is, are we really that?
All right.
Yeah, is it so I mean, is it crazy to want to help people? I mean, when I say help people, I mean
It
help us
shouldn't
all,
be.
Now, I hope you understood exactly what occurred there, what Tom explained. Somebody died that didn't have to die, and they died a slow death in a 24-hour period in which any one of those hours could have saved his life, absent a profiteering, overtaxed healthcare system. If you think we are exceptional, if you think we have the best healthcare in the world, then we can convince you of just about anything. This system is horrendous. Go to any other country in the world, including several that we consider third world countries. Something like this would have never occurred. We can do better. We should do better. We must do better. Medicare for all, a Medicare for all that prevents things like that, the death, unnecessary death of people from occurring. Tom, first of all, thank you for bringing that story, and please give us an update of how this man's widow is doing. I'd love to know that. Is she going to take this somewhere? I mean, I wish she would talk about it and put a video to it, because I think more than anything, what people need to see in other people's pain is that, and to gain if they cannot gain an empathy just from words, is to see that person and live vicariously through that person, because then you can start to see that could be me. Some of us don't need to feel it could be us before we act, but some of us require that we see it could be us before we act. And I don't know how you're wired, but what the heck. Anyway, we have here Eric Hayes says, our Macaronet response to Eric. Russia invading Ukraine isn't likely. This is just another Red Scare as they are posturing. Your fear exceeds that of Ukrainians. Ukrainians stay calm while you play Chicken Little. The sky is falling. I am lost about it. You notice that I had last time that we spoke, Katrina van den Heuvel. She's one. She knows quite a bit about Russia. She's lived there. She's been on the bad side of many progressives because of the stance that she's taken with Russia, with the Nations magazine that she's an editor of. So like I said, I make sure to entertain all points of view so that I can actually learn what is actually happening out there. Anyway, Michael Rodman says, if you confess you are completely baffled as to why Trump garnered such support, how can you possibly profess to be some kind of authority on how to talk to conservatives? You admit ignorance and want us to believe your claims of some kind of unique insight on how to discuss politics with the right. Yet another clue, Egberto Willis is a charlatan. Well, thank you for calling me a charlatan, Mr. Ledo. But let me just explain something, right? Nobody is perfect. Nobody has all the answers. I never claim to have all the answers. I do claim that I have the canny ability that I get along very well with people on the right, and because I garner some respect, they tend to listen. And I've said, if we learn how to be respectful to garner said respect, we can talk to people, and there's a certain percentage of those people who have been indoctrinated by the likes of Donald Trump. We don't have a clue how they have been predisposed to listen to him, but many of them, when we ask them to answer certain questions themselves, in other words, we not just promote it, and that's what I promote in the book. I try to say, don't go out there and put a hammer on these people's heads, but ask them to work with you. And I've given examples as to how we work. So that it's no magical, Mr. Ledo, or nothing about me being a charlatan, none of that. None of that. All right, let's see. Daniel Ledo, Trump lied to regular people, acted as false populist promised policies that never materialized, while permitting conservatives to act upon the worst impulses, mainlined hate and xenophobia. Can't argue with that. Let's see. Eric had said, let's see. Eric K says, we have a lot of stuff that is now broken, sadly. I know there are people not getting organs if they are not vaccinated. Why is this? I wouldn't waste an organ on somebody that refuses to get vaccinated, because if they refuse to get vaccinated, they're likely to refuse to take some of the drugs that will prevent their if somebody tells me that they believe in ivermectin and all these kinds of stuff that so far is unproven, I will not give them an organ, because they may spoil the organ. They may read some conspiracy theory elsewhere and try it with an organ that could have gone to somebody who would follow the protocol. Let's see. Daniel Ado to Eric Hayes. I can help you understand there are forces at work here for bigger than PDR. Oh, I didn't know that I was a big force at all, but my God. Thank you, Daniel. I love you, brother. All right, let's continue here. Eric Hayes says, right, okay, Russia will do it and China has their back and will support one another. Don't kid yourself on this. Having Biden call the shots and this is just as dangerous. And it is funny, if you looked at the press conference between Biden and Germany, it is amazing how Biden came across as being the leader of the free world between him and the prime minister and the chancellor from Germany. But when Angela Merkel was standing next to Trump, she made Trump look like a bumbling buffoon. Interesting. But then again, Trump is a bumbling buffoon. I can say that about leaders. I don't speak like that about my brothers and sisters that are Republicans. Carl Cox says, conservatives believe only the wealthy, especially the mega rich, deserve health care. They want America to become a third world country. Did you see that my last email? I haven't seen your last email yet, Carl Cox. I'm in email hell. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days to get to certain emails. So, I'm sorry. I got like 5 or 6 different email addresses, and they're all full. Not full. I still have to go through all of them. All right, let's see what else we got. We have Lee Grant. Let's see. Eric Hayes says, what stinks and not humane as well are equal, vaccinated or not? No. If you are not vaccinated, you don't deserve an organ. Just like if you're an alcoholic, you don't deserve an organ. Because again, other people that have been more responsible to take care of that or that have proven responsibility should be up first to get the organ. I mean, it's common sense. It's called personal responsibility, something that Republicans used to preach until Donald Trump. Noah Rattler, even though the leaders of the party never followed it. Noah Rattler, good show, Egberto. Noah, thank you so kindly for your comments, sir. Daniel Edo says, understanding why the right voted for Trump is kind of fundamental to any analysis of the right. But considering you consistently proclaim that what are the best interests of the same people, you cannot understand why they voted, there is a disconnect here. Not really, Michael Rudden. I don't get into the issues other than economic issues, okay? I don't get into the abortion issues per se. I don't get into the church issues per se, other than put out a few facts about that. So, but I don't get deeply into those issues. So that is immaterial to me. The gun, Second Amendment crap, all of that stuff, those are things that have too many gray areas. I get into this more of the absolute areas, okay? And when I talk about your interests, I am generally talking about your economic interests. So the truth of the matter is, does a right-wing person need good health care as much as a lefty need good health care? The answer is yes. Do they have intersecting realities there? The answer is yes. There's not two ways to answer that. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about when you try to create a disconnect that isn't there. China says, China, Russia, and Iran and North Korea laugh at America now. No, I don't. Look, you can't laugh at America. Look, I don't. Remember, there are two Americas, right? There's America, the capitalist country that runs the world. And don't have any doubt about it, people. Our economic system, meaning all in fact, we can shut any country down because we control many of the fundamentals of the electronic transfers of monies that allow international commerce. Don't let anybody fool you that that has changed yet. I mean, if other countries were smart and were willing to take some short-term pain, like some European countries along with some African countries, they could create some methodologies to mitigate that. But when it comes to SWIFT, the way the banks exchange funds, etc., the United States could cut SWIFT out today. And then Russia can't get paid or have issues. So it's okay. So no, let's not, I mean, they laughed at Trump. They didn't laugh at the power of the American plutocracy. And we have to create the distinction there. All right, I want to show you something about inflation. Farid Zakaria made it very clear. Let's go ahead and talk inflation. Farid Zakaria came out with some numbers that show, first of all, inflation is not as bad as the media would like you to believe or the Republicans would like you to believe. And not only that, as I stated with a few other economists, it is important again that we do more than just think about inflation. Check out Farid Zakaria, and then we'll go ahead and take that on the other side.
Americans are struggling with inflation. Prices have jumped for everything from hamburgers to housing, making it harder to stretch a paycheck. But step back and the picture looks less dire. In recent decades, inflation had stayed unusually low. From 1960 to 1980, for example, prices rose 166%. In the next 2 decades, they rose 117%. But from 2000 to January 2021, prices rose just 55%, including all of last year. From 2000 through December 2021, prices rose 65.5%. That is a huge uptick in 1 year, and it is throwing household budgets out of whack. But taken as a whole, we are still in an era of low inflation. Now, one reason prices probably stayed low for so long is because wages stayed low. This graph looks at wages going back to 2001, adjusted for inflation. You see, workers didn't start to make real gains until the late 2010s, and now inflation is eating into those gains. But they have made gains, and perhaps as inflation subsides, those gains will grow again. Cheap goods helped keep inflation down in the last 2 decades. Have a look at this graph by Mark Perry of the American Enterprise Institute. Remember, overall inflation since 2000 was 65.5%. The blue lines are expenses that have stayed below general inflation or even gotten cheaper. Products like cars, clothing, and TVs. And consider TVs. One reason they got cheaper was globalization, as other countries can produce goods at lower cost. Another reason was innovation. TVs use microchips, which have grown cheaper even as they've grown more powerful. A further reason is quality, and this is a bit of a technicality, but it matters. Take a TV from 2000 with a sticker price of $300 and a TV that costs $300 today. Today's TV will be bigger, have better picture quality, better sound quality, connection to the internet, and therefore the option of infinite movies and shows on demand. So, statisticians raise the price of the old TV to reflect the fact that with the new one, you're getting more bang for your buck. The lines in red show things that have gotten less affordable, mainly services like healthcare. Obviously, healthcare is more essential than a new TV. There are a number of explanations for skyrocketing health costs. Regulation, administrative demands, hospital mergers, the limited number of slots for training new doctors. So there's a lot that can be done to rein in costs. But that's not the whole story. The statisticians don't really adjust for quality of services like healthcare. Heart surgeries, for example, may have gotten more expensive, but they are also better, more effective. And the benefits of cutting-edge drugs and techniques have been significant. From 2000 to 2019, life expectancy in the US increased by a whole 2 years to 78.8. This was in a period that included terror attacks, 2 wars in the Middle East, and the opioid epidemic. We have seen a scary surge in inflation, and families are struggling. But the flip side of the low inflation of the last few decades had been stagnant wages for a long, long period. Let's hope we can find a better balance with rising wages and what is still by historical standards low inflation, and at the same time continue to reap the benefits of human progress that have helped us to lead better and longer lives.
I, for the most part, agree with what Senor Farid Zakaria had to say, but I disagree on one thing because Farid Zakaria said, okay, healthcare has gotten better, not healthcare, but the procedures have gotten better. But it doesn't matter if the procedures have gotten better if what you find is that the life expectancy has increased 2 years for Americans and 6 years for the rest of the world. And yet in America, we have paid more bang for the buck than the people overseas. In other words, our expectancy is what, 78 years or so? And guess what? You go to France or these other countries, it's 82 years old, right? So what have we gotten? What have we gotten for that? Very little. The other thing that he says is, okay, heart transplants and heart procedures have gotten better. Yes, but does that mean that because it has gotten better, the price should go up? Capitalism says yes, the price should go up as, oh, we're doing those things. But humanity says that is a human issue. We're always striving to save lives, and the strive to save life shouldn't have a cost attached to it. That is putting a cost onto life, which is, God, if you're even a Christian or whatever, you should not believe in anything of that nature. And then he has a way of saying as well that, well, in effect, what he said, he didn't say this overtly, but it's what he meant. Productivity in America has zoomed up, which means it takes less people to make a whole lot more. And the problem that I have with accepting that as being an increase in cost or price or whatever, the problem I have with that is not taking into account that the people who have made productivity better is we, the people, the workers who have gotten more efficient based on techniques that have created by engineers and others. But the people who have kept the spoils are the stockholders, the shareholders, and the executives. Why do they reap the benefit of productivity while we stay with stagnant wages? In other words, Microsoft gets the rather. Let's use another company. Some company A build tractors with a lot less people. It's a lot more efficient. And what they do is that extra profit goes to the shareholders. Why? Why? The universities that taught the engineers who made things more efficient didn't get paid. I mean, we have to. The problem with our economic system is it does not know how to reward worth. It is a very poor rewarder of worth. We have learned how to steal. It steals the worth of people. In other words, I innovate and he takes the spoils. I create and he takes the spoils. He is the one who takes the innovation, the profits from the innovation. We have not learned that in school. We have learned that there's something special about that person who has capital. We have to unlearn that. And that's why I preach this day after day after day. Until we unlearn where worth really belongs. WORTH. The worthy ones are you. And I can't stress that enough. The worthy ones are you. But you are made to believe that the worthy ones are those with capital. And we have got to stop that. We have got to remove the chains from people's minds. I want to end with one more video. This is, let's see, Daniel says, Egberto and his comrades want to decide your worth. Come on, man. That terrifies me. No, I don't. Somebody else has defined your worth, Daniel. The guy who took the spoils have defined your worth. That's what I'm trying to teach you. All right? That plutocrat has said, your worth is this amount of money, and anything that you produce over and above that is mine. Can you get that? Robert Davenport says, during the lockdown and the recovery, manufacturers saw that people wanted the most. Regardless of demand issues, they had current data about people consume first. No surprise they raised those prices. Exactly, Davenport. Eric Hay. So anyhow, I want to play this video because we always talk about voter suppression, and nobody wants to talk about our unjust justice system. I want you to listen to this snippet that I just kind of shrank down from Rachel Maddow, and if this doesn't teach you something and tell you something, I don't know what will. Check this out.
What do these four people all have in common? You might recognize some of them, you might not. But what they do have in common is something pretty specific. All four of these men were all found guilty of committing voter fraud in the 2020 election. The gentleman in the upper left, he's a Republican from Nevada. His wife died several years ago. He nevertheless filled out her ballot and cast it in the presidential election. He then participated in efforts with the Nevada Republican Party to claim that his dead wife's ballot being cast in the election must mean there was mass voter fraud by Democrats. He is the one who cast his dead wife's ballot. He's a Republican. He got caught. He was sentenced to probation. That's the guy in the upper left. Guy in the upper right, he's a Republican elected official from Ohio. In his case, it was his father who died, and he cast his dead father's ballot in the 2020 election. That Ohio Republican official was sentenced to a grand total of 3 days in jail. Keep going clockwise. The gentleman on the lower right, he's from Pennsylvania. In his case, it was his mother who had died. He nevertheless cast her ballot for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. He was caught. He got probation. And then the last guy, lower left there, he's another Pennsylvania Republican whose mother also died. Apparently, he couldn't help himself. He cast a ballot in her name in the 2020 election. He got caught. He got probation. There was no large-scale fraud of any kind in the 2020 election. There were a handful of sort of pitiful individual voter fraud cases like this. Voting twice, effectively, using a dead relative's ballot, that sort of thing. And in a handful of cases, the ones involving these Republican guys that I just showed you, for example, in a handful of cases, we have seen those cases fully adjudicated already. They've made their way all the way through the criminal justice system. And of those 4 cases, we know one guy got 3 days in jail, and the rest just got probation. That's what those guys have in common. Now, this is Pamela Moses of Memphis, Tennessee. This week, Ms. Moses was also sentenced for a crime related to her efforts to vote in the 2020 election. Ms. Moses had a felony conviction in Tennessee that legally resulted in her not being allowed to vote again in that state. But she says that nobody ever told her that that particular conviction meant that she couldn't vote. And her county elections board admits in writing that despite her conviction, they never actually took her off the voting rolls. A probation officer with the Tennessee Department of Corrections even wrote her a note, filled out an official certificate saying that Ms. Moses was eligible to vote. Ms. Moses turned in that certificate from the probation officer along with her voter registration application. And for that grave crime, she was just sentenced in Tennessee. What was her sentence? She got 6 years in prison. That has just happened this week in Tennessee. What's the big difference between Pam Moses in Tennessee and all those other guys who actually cast illegal ballots in the name of relatives they definitely knew were dead? All of those guys got probation, in one case, 3 days in jail. She got 6 years in prison for trying to register to vote after she had received an official certificate from the probation department telling her it was okay if she registered to vote. 6 years in prison is her sentence. Seriously. And this is not like some historic crime that we're uncovering. That just happened this week.
Egberto Willies, as host of Politics Done Right, a progressive radio media show on Pacifica Network's KPFT 90.1 FM Houston that engages all ideologies. I found that our political angst isn't mostly ideological. There is a well-designed effort by many in power to control us. If we are at each other's throats, we are less likely to demand our economic and local wishes. In that light, I wrote 3 books. I wrote the first one titled, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, to describe the entire economy in a manner we can all understand. It highlights why it was designed to pilfer most as it empowers a few, the chosen. The second book, titled, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, take it to the next level. After understanding how the system pilfers, it is incumbent that we can speak to our peers to empower a change. The third book, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, gives us a place to land. After learning about our economy that is dysfunctional for most and learning how to engage the other side, we point out what would make an economy that works for all. Each book stands on its own, but together they provide the full picture. Please consider getting one or more. You will undoubtedly learn, be entertained, and help us continue the mission with our blogs, articles, videos, and books. Hey, folks, thank you so kindly for being here. Before I go, though, I just forgot we're at the end of the show and I never made my ask. So please, folks, please support us. You can go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. politicsdoneright.com/PayPal to support what we do to try to get the message out. You can also support us by going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, you can click that join button. Please click that join button and support what we do. It is important that this work gets done. Go ahead and support us at, if you're on some other platform, go to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. You can also support us at politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. And of course, if you don't have all those links, you just go to, or rather, if you want to get our books, go to politicsdoneright.com/books, politicsdoneright.com/books. See you tomorrow, Michael Rudden. Thank you so kindly for being here and for all that you do for Politics Done Right. By the way, we have new stuff at our store. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/store. And when you get a t-shirt or a hat or a cup or whatever at the store, send me a snapshot of the picture so I can keep it in our repertoire so that, or in the party days, we can put that out. And again, the catch-all place where you can find out all the different methods in which you can support us. Go to politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support, and that way you can support what we do here. By the way, thank you so kindly for saying that, Mr. Lee Grant. My conservative buddy said I had a great show today. Love you, brother. Appreciate it. Michael Rodin says, what kind of jury convicted her? I am not sure of that. I didn't look that one up. Let's see. Davenport says if we do not allow people to learn from history, we can keep rerunning all the old scams. Plutocrats do not want to innovate. They just want to keep the same game rigged. Exactly right. Let's see what else we have here. Everybody talking to me. Systemic racism is real. That is why CRT scares so many, even though it's not taught. It's amazing, right? E2247 says your actions matter. Your message make a difference, even if we have leaders who don't. Thank you, E2247. Eric Hayes says, Egberto, why don't you have a telethon? I never got into that. But anyhow, folks, I know you could be anywhere else, but you're here with me today. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the PDR group here. I've got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. You guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.